Thank you for joining us for another For Investors by Investors Long Beach-Cerritos podcast. As always, we're proud to be your all-education real estate resource without any kind of sales pitch. If you'd like to attend one of our meetings in person, we meet on the last Thursday of each month at the Cerritos Library in Cerritos, California. You can RSVP at meetup.com/For Investors by Investors. To find more investment resources such as blogs and podcasts and content from other FIBI groups, go to forinvestorsbyinvestors.com and search our entire library. Now on to the podcast.
Thank you guys very much for joining us today. Who's here the first time here today? Okay, good. This is our second meeting, so a lot of you guys are liars. So we actually just moved this from our Long Beach venue, from the Grand Long Beach over here. We really love the venue here, and it's more of a centralized location for people to be able to network and get here because all the traffic in every direction of the 405 and getting to Long Beach. So thank you guys for joining us here today. We've been actually running this since 2008. So I figured it was a good idea to do that right after the real estate crash, so I could network and develop more relationships. So that being said, we actually Raymond joined us a couple months ago to be a co-host of FIBI Long Beach Cerritos to help us out here. Raymond is probably one of the hungriest go-getters that I've ever met when it comes to actually his realty business, and the guy has a machine going. It's pretty awesome. So when you guys actually need help or need education on real estate investing or California real estate or what's going on, Raymond's the guy to talk to. Raymond, why don't you tell just a quick overview of your business?
Of course. So can everybody hear me? Yeah. I'm still getting familiar with microphone. So my name is Raymond Tsai, and I'm from KW Realty. I've been doing real estate for about 13 years now. And I went from selling 1 house a year to now we're aiming for about 100 homes this year from our team. So my experience, I'm mainly in residential real estate. So if you ever have questions in local areas like the Valley, in the Empire, Orange County, I can answer any questions you may have. And today I'm here actually to learn from Matt too, because for multi-units, that's his specialty. And I'm involved in one of the syndications in St. Valley, so I do want to know more and see why you can help me out.
We're going to go over some syndications today as well, so you guys see the different types of investing you guys can do in multifamilies. So For Investors by Investors was actually formed in 2007 by a couple of investors by the name of Jeremy Roll and Ella San Jose. They were tired of going to real estate investment clubs and getting a pitch every time. They were like, you know what, we don't want the book and tape sets, we don't want the boot camps at the end of it and the upsell for someone's product and all that stuff. And so they wanted a place to go where there's actually networking, that you can go and learn from other investors and develop those resources, and a place where you can learn and develop the skill sets. And so we do tons of different topics, from self-directed IRA investing to fixing and flipping, to private lending, to mobile home parks. We did one in January on cannabis and real estate. We did one on short-term rentals and real estate. We did one on technology and real estate. There's so many new things coming out now that it's really, really important to stay on top of everything. So we have about 6 different chapters throughout Southern California that all have this same type of mentality. And we have one in Orange County, one in Pasadena. I co-run one in Manhattan Beach as well, and so we have a brand new one in Culver City, and so we're growing, and all of the clubs have the same type of mentality from a no sales pitch mentality. We just try to teach. They're all professional investors, and we're a nonprofit organization. We don't make any money at this. I break even at best on any of these venues with all the costs and the marketing and all that kind of stuff. And so we do this because I developed the relationships I need for real estate. And it's a huge, like all the people in the room, half of you don't know the resources you even have to develop real estate. If I sat down with you and started talking with you and saying, well, who do you know in this area? Who do you know that has this expertise? You start developing a crazy team. And that's really what it is resources from different team members, whether it's capital investors, whether it's people that find property or know local markets that can find you those types of deals and really be scouring things for you in different ways. There's a ton of resources there. So that's why we started this. We started off at a round table where I had 6 people at a round table at a real estate office and agreed to this. And, we have a pretty good crowd tonight because everybody wants to learn how to do multifamilies. I'm sorry to say, most multifamilies in California are very tough to cash flow right now, and you're paying top dollar. And so you want to be able to make sure you get the right types of assets that are going to give you that right buffer at the right time in the market. That being said, I'm a CPA. I'm a full-time, my name is Matthew Owens, I'm a CPA, a full-time real estate investor. I flip about 5 to 10 houses a month. We've done over 700 flips in the last 10 years. We do a lot of value-add multifamily properties as well. We lend capital to different flippers in different markets around the country. We have a short-term rental business. We run this nonprofit organization, and it's just a lot more fun than doing taxes and things like that. So, and I will not do your tax return. There's no way. I will help you if you need the help, but I will not do your tax return. It's not worth the time. So,
I have something to add. So who are here today that have money that you want to lend out? Raise your hand so we can see you. It's like Matt said, this is a great event for networking and finding resources. And who are here to look for deals? Okay, so everyone's here for the deals. And who's here that have deals and you're looking for investors, you're looking for monies?
it sounds about right for California.
Yeah, so chase them down.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. So, and the reason he brings that up is because the people that raise their hand, meet them afterwards. Go talk with them. These are the people that you want to be networking with. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. There's no more. Actually, you know what? I have some slides that I want to go over for 2 minutes with you guys, so you guys understand, who our sponsors are. We don't do this. We don't make any money at this, like I mentioned. And we have some, tenants are crazy coming up in FIBI South Bay. And then let me exit this so that you guys can see. So we have a couple of events coming up. The first one is FIBI South Bay, tenants are crazy. You are too if you aren't protected. And how to be the bank and invest in promissory notes. So we have a couple of full-time promissory note investors coming in next month to here just to teach everything about promissory notes. And then we have a panel discussion in Manhattan Beach on the tenants are crazy part. So it's basically all about asset protection and making sure that you're tight on that side of things, because once you start developing wealth, you better protect yourself because you become a target. Okay, so all of that is really important. Now, here's our sponsors. So Hart King is a law firm that I utilize quite a bit for my own contracts, and they basically are a sponsor for us to help other real estate investors with their contracts and with real estate law. Trillion Capital is a hard money lender that basically helps lend capital to flippers in this market. And I know there's Civics in the back over here. They're also very good hard money lenders based out in the Manhattan Beach area. Is it Redondo or Manhattan?
Manhattan Beach Boulevard in Redondo.
Okay, so it's right there. In the beach, at an amazing location. I just visited their venue the other day, their place the other day, and it was absolutely amazing. Like, they're a gigantic company. So, UDirect IRA, where is Jeff? Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about what UDirect does?
We are a self-directed IRA company, which means that you can invest IRA funds into assets outside of the stock market. So if you'd like to do things like own real estate or make loans or invest in private companies, syndications, gas and oil wells, this is what a self-directed IRA can help you do. You just have to work with a company that agrees to hold these types of alternative assets, because most companies will limit you to stocks and bonds. The IRS doesn't. The companies themselves limit you to stocks and bonds.
So you guys know how you got who invests with their self-directed IRA now? Okay, who's new to self-directed IRA? I have no idea what I'm talking about. Awesome. Thank you guys. That's huge because it's not taught. Okay, people don't teach this type of stuff. So I've flipped houses in 12 months in a day, Jeff. I've flipped houses inside my own 401k. Okay, I've gone through and invested in promissory notes inside my own 401k. There's so many strategies you can do right inside your 401k. Your 401k or your IRA can borrow money from other investors. You can invest in tons of different stuff. So it's really, really cool when you start to learn the different strategies to invest. People buy houses and hold them long term inside their 401k and their IRAs. The Node Assistance Program is actually the ones that are going to be here next month that are teaching all about promissory notes and node investing. So I'm going to be doing a Q&A with them. We're going to be talking about all kinds of node investing from performing notes and lending to actually buying non-performing notes and things like that, which is what the Node Assistance Program actually specializes in. Concept 360 is a property management company based in Long Beach. They're a great company to work with. Have expelled some great knowledge on me based on the California tenant landlord laws and things like that. Whenever you're looking for a good management company, you have to have somebody that knows what they're doing with the tenant landlord laws in the state that you're doing business in. Otherwise, it's going to cost you a lot of money in the long run if you get people that don't know what they're doing on that side. New Western Acquisitions is a wholesaler. Is anybody here from New Western? I don't see anybody here right now. So, New Western is a wholesaler in California that does a ton of volume out here. So, that being said, that is the end of these slides. Other than I want to tell you guys about a conference that's coming up. It's the Intelligent Investor 2018. IntelligentInvestor18.com, and we are throwing a conference in November, November 10th and 11th in Marina del Rey. If you guys are interested in going, we're going to have some great speakers there. All the same type of stuff, no sales pitch type event. We're basically breaking even on that event as well, and just to try to teach people and bringing some really good speakers in that they're going to kill it on the education side. So, anybody have any questions before we start? Yeah.
What was that website? It's
IntelligentInvestor18.com.
18.com. Got it. Thank you. 18.com.
Yes. If I'm wrong, email me and I'll give you the right address. We just came out of it, so.
Is that on Meetup, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, and everybody that's part of the meetup group should have gotten an email like 2 days ago or something like that with that. So, that being said, who wants to learn about multifamily now? Awesome. Let's get into the stuff. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a ton of different examples, some different strategies, how to value these, how to actually go through and come up with the right expenses and the structures for these, okay? And how to find them. I'm going to go over a slew of the due diligence components of them. I'm going to be going over everything for you guys. So keep in mind, this is a Q&A, so please feel free to ask questions, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. If I can't get to it, or if there's starting to be too many, and I can't get to those questions because I have a lot of content to cover, then we'll talk about it offline afterwards, or we'll wait till the end and we'll have another Q&A session. So that being said, let me first show you guys a picture of my daughter. This is my son. My son is 3 years old now, and I already got him Cash Flow for Kids, the Robert Kiyosaki game, and he's playing with it right now. And this is my 2-month-old daughter that is already going to be a real estate genius and the chubbiest little girl you've ever met. Future flipper from one of my flipper friends. But anyways, now that the mood is a little lighter, you can't really be, thinking this guy's full of crap when I'm showing you pictures of my baby. So, all right. So, maybe I am still, but it's all right. So, anyway, so let me go up to my multifamily content here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the different examples of some of the deals that I did and how they worked out and some of those strategies just on and so that you understand what I've done. And then I'm going to start taking you through every single expense item. I'm going to take you through how we start off on an initial analysis of a deal. Okay? So that way you can kind of get a gauge for what makes a good deal, what makes a bad deal, and stuff like that. So first thing is this 190 Hawthorne property. So this property here was a 12-unit property that we purchased in Memphis, Tennessee. I own a management company, a renovation company, and a brokerage out in Memphis, okay? And so I have employees there out in that market that do this. And so we bought this property that was built in 1912, okay? Don't ever do that. unless you're planning on tearing the whole thing down, don't ever do that. This thing had foundation issues. We went to go reframe all the windows and doors on this thing, and it doesn't look that bad when you're looking at the windows. Yeah, it needs some renovation, but it's not horrible. But when we went to go take apart the windows and put new windows in, for all the framing, it was just torn up, destroyed, all old, rotten. We walked into a unit on this after we bought it, and when we walked in, it was a week after we had seen it last time, and there was just a heavy rain, and it was a vacant unit. We walked in, and the entire unit was full of mold. we were like, oh, and it sounds scary, but it's like, hey, we'll get some people in there, get taken care of, it's just money. You're like, yeah, just money. But just money meaning buffer on these multifamilies. You have to overestimate on your rehabs to make this work correctly. Okay, so you can see, it needed a new roof. It needed this is like what it looked like beforehand. They tried to give you the best pictures possible here, and in reality, it was not. So this is where it is in Memphis, and I basically tried to go through and do this, and so let me just show you a couple more here. So we had to do the subfloors underneath all this. So we tore all this out and had to redo everything. When they tore this out, the plumbing was falling apart in the plumber's hands, and this building was 100% occupied, and there was mold all over the windows in the bathrooms. We're like, everybody out. You're all getting kicked out. This is a giant liability. And a lot of them were like oohing and hawing. You can't. I have a lease. I'm like, this is under tenant landlord laws. This is an unsafe condition for you to be in. We need you to move. We'll help you with the relocation costs to make sure everybody's not, is happy with us and not suing us for leaving and not having problems there. And we had other apartments that we were able to move them to, or other houses that we were able to help with. But this was, it was so bad in some of these things that this one is like one of the best units that I got from the realtor, of course, right? So, and yeah, that's always the case. Don't ever believe a pro forma, by the way. So, especially when it comes to most commercial agents don't do it right or they're selling, So, this is the parking lot area, stuff like that. But it was a mess. So this is another lead across the street that I took. So afterwards, this is what it looked like after the fact. And we did everything to these things to make them. We had to keep see this framing right here? The framing on all this? You can't get rid of that. You know why? Let somebody tell me. Well, no, not from the historic. It's lead-based paint. You go and try to go and remove this. You can paint over it. You got to sand it or remove it. And you got hazmat crews, you got to get in there and get this stuff done. And it also obviously leaves some of the historic look to the building and things like that too. But you don't want to really get through that. And when you buy these types of buildings, and 90% of it is plaster. It's not drywall. So if you have to go into a wall, you're replacing that entire wall. You're not replacing a patch. So it's really, really hard to patch that stuff. And so we went through and upgraded this whole thing. These are like little studios. We didn't do cabinets on these because of the location and the area that these are in. Most people are just like singles or people that have like the trendy. They put their dishes on top and things like that. So I call it trendy. A lot of people call it me being cheap and not wanting to buy cabinets. So this was obviously an over budget project in this kind of thing. And so I was in this project. It was worth about $1 million, just under that. We actually were marketing it for $985,000, and we were into it for about $975,000. And so we were like, oh crap, we're about to lose money or take a haircut on this deal. And so what's interesting is that I found a private seller because I didn't need to pay commissions and things like that. And we went through and found someone that needed a 1031 exchange that said, hey, I need to buy something for $1.1 million and put $660,000 down and be the bank. And for the rest, I need someone to lend me $400,000 and for this to complete my 1031 exchange so that way they don't have to pay taxes on this giant sale they had in California. And so I said, look, I'm only selling this for $985,000. How am I going to get you to $1.1 million? So I sold it to him for $1.1 million with the $660 down, the $440 loan is 7% interest, amortized over 15 years with a balloon payment at the end of 5 years. Okay? I give him an interest credit for the first 3 years and just held that difference from over that extra $100,000 difference in reserves and credited his payment every single month for this. So it worked with his exchange. He was able to actually get some extra cash flow and get that extra cash flow on a monthly basis that was helped with, which was fixed with depreciation and things like that. So we got this whole project completed and sold, and the investor's doing great, holding it long term. In the meantime, we had got screwed by our electrician. It cost me an extra 30 grand. And I'm going, crap, what am I going to do? That sucks. An extra 30 grand. 3 years later, actually he bought this in 12, or no, 15 he bought this. And so he's selling now, and he's looking at making about 1.25 million on this deal, and I get the commission with my brokerage out there. So I made the 30 grand back right from that, from reselling it to another international client that wants the tax benefits. A lot of the investors in Japan and China get to, and specifically Japan's tax law, get to write off the building portion over 5 years for tax for depreciation purposes. Normally for commercial, you're talking about 39 years. Single family homes, residential is 27 and a half years depreciation. This is 39 years. And so what they get to do is write off, $1 million building plus over a 5-year period of time, because out in Tennessee, the land is worth much less. It's like 20% and the building's like 80%. So they get to write off the building over a 5-year period, which is huge. And so it's an interesting deal. I learned so much from this, from the plumbing falling apart to reframing to like the flooring. It was a nightmare project, but it was probably the best learning curve I've ever had in my life to break even on a project. On this type of thing, and then take care of my investor and pay the extra 30 when I'm like, no, it was our contractor, we're going to take care of that guy, I'm not going to make him take a $30,000 hit because he's one of my investors. So these are the things that it's interesting, the strategies you can deploy in this. And so this was the inspection report here that I'll take you guys through, because I wanted to show you guys what you're looking for when you're looking through an inspection on some of these properties. It's actually extremely important to know what you're looking at, because if you don't, you're going to run into a very, very, very bad situation, okay? And in the beginning of this, I didn't know what I was looking for. And that's why it cost me way more money than I really thought. And so, let me take you through this. Let's see, 59 pages. So, blah, blah, blah stuff, right? Disclosure, disclosure, disclaimer, disclaimer. Anything you find in here you can't sue me for. That's what this says, okay? Let's see. So normally what I'm doing here is they go through each section of the property, and they're pointing out all these things, and they're pointing out, hey, why did this need to be replaced right here? Is that water damage that came through? And so yes, it absolutely was. It was water damage that kept running down the sides, and over time, and we had to replace all of this and break this whole piece apart to actually redo the cement on the entire front of the building. And so we had major foundation issues on the insides of these things with the pillars. You can see this porch is leaning forward. So we had to redo a lot of that to make it up and running and perfect again. This is what left rear wall has a large crack from water intrusion. This is where, it's plumbing intrusions and tons of water coming in from the sides of the house. This is what happens when you don't have gutters on your property. Okay, this is what happens when it's constantly, and in the Midwest market, when you get constant rain and getting beat up and beat up and beat up, you got to have those gutters run that stuff away from your foundation, or your single families or your multifamilies are going to have major problems long term. And make sure those things are working well, especially in the Midwest when you have tons of rain. Okay, so you can see here more foundation issues and things like that with this. The stairways, this is all the back of the property. All of these, so what's crazy is in this bricking here, we had to go through the entire back of the building and seal all the bricks, because what happens is the rain runs down the bricks and inside the wall and causes even more damage. So you have to seal that kind of stuff on the bricking so that things don't go through there. I don't know what they were doing with this bootleg laundry thing, but so structural issues with this coming away from the wall. This is the plaster. You're like, what am I supposed to do with this stuff? You gotta really get rid of everything in there. It's crazy. Just the entryways. You can see, these are the joists. This is why we were like, great, let's go through and replace all of this. And all the plumbing underneath the property as well. So these are the things that were not falling apart in your hands. The cast iron ones were right underneath the toilet because it's been wet and damp down there forever, and it's been just constantly moving, and the foundation problems are causing it to break even more on these. And so you can see how bad this is all water damage. They bring a moisture meter in there, and they start to look at, how is it still wet, or is this a problem that's gone now? Well, this is a bootleg foundation support. You look at this and you're going, that we had to bring in a foundation inspector here to do this and actually take a look at this to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
They put a temporary in another.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So you're seeing all this, obviously, carports getting hit with these things. I mean, it was a giant mess. There's an active leak in the porch roof. That's why there was mold everywhere in that one unit. You see it coming through, just running down the sides, and it's absolutely crazy. You can see the wood posts here get all eaten up, all had to be replaced. So this thing was a giant mess. Just to kind of show you, all this wood damage had to be completely taken out because, you've got to replace that stuff soon and reseal it because of the water damage out there. Yeah, it's a huge problem. So just to kind of, and it had all these window units on every single unit too, that we had to go replace and put the right supports on there because they're starting to sag down around the sides of the windows because the window framing was destroyed. So this is actually a really high-end area in Memphis, really trendy area. But you can see they try to seal some of the cracks with just spray in there in the past instead of doing it the right way. AC handlers,
Wait, was that a pipe coming out the bottom?
Yeah. So yeah, and the electrical on this thing. Look at this.
Was that corroded?
This is the electrical. This is a fire waiting to happen right here. Okay, so you guys get the point. A messed up property, obviously. They put these supports in here. You're like, wow, that's just bootleg stuff that they put in. Let's see, ceiling and walls. Okay, you guys have seen enough of this. So this is just one of the examples of one of the deals we did that we broke even on at best, right? And so now I'm going to take you through. This is a 30 unit that we just finished. We bought this one for $750,000 out in Tennessee, 30 units. Needed a ton of work, right? We were into it for about 1.1 after we were finished with this building, and we ended up selling it for 1.75 about 2 years later after the construction was done. Question?
For people who are new to it, so how much were you paying a door in Memphis?
So I'm going to get to that. I'll get to that because I need to show you guys the breakdown of the rehab on the construction side. It's different in every single market. You might as well double or triple your construction costs compared to the Tennessee market out here. The labor costs are just a lot more. The compliance costs are a lot more out here. You have major issues with permitting and everything out here. In the Midwest markets, I know people that were builders out here and left because the permitting stuff can take, construction permitting can take so long in California depending on what you're doing. And so out there, you get a permit in a couple weeks. You're done. And, I got a buddy of mine that builds houses in North Carolina. He's like, and he used to live here, and he's going, this is amazing. I can get a house up in 3 months with no problem with permitting. It's pretty amazing. So, question?
Matthew, how did you determine the price which you were willing to pay for the Hawthorne building? Inexperience and stupidity. That's how I interpret it.
I was doing my best to come up with the right numbers for the cash flow, what I thought the cash flow was on that property, and you back into your purchase price every single time. I was wrong on my numbers on the construction side. I wasn't wrong on my numbers on my initial numbers. We were just going to go clean it up and fix some of these things until we saw this inspection report, and we're like, okay, let's go high end with this thing, and we got our rents that worked out for us and that made that deal work. Otherwise, we would have been really underwater. If we just came in here and tried to clean this up and resell it, it's still got all the problems. You're not going to be able to fix that. So the only option at that point was to go super high end at that point and do it. So and I basically, I think I got this thing for like $300,000 or something like that at the end of the day, thinking, oh, that's a great deal. I'm getting $300,000 for this, and then $600,000 in rehab later, or around there. And you're like, wait a minute, that's a lot. I'm going to go over the numbers and how you back into that after I show some of these things so you can see that. Okay. So this building here, let's see here. So here's the inspection report on this property, and there's some specific things that I want to show you in this that I think are important to understand. So when you're going through the renovation on these, you want to look at the interior and the exterior separately and understand what you have to do to each. You're kind of compartmentalizing those aspects, the outside and inside, and the major systems. So in this property, this was the wrought iron walkways. These things were destroyed, and that's because they didn't do the right sealing on the top of them. And they had cement on the top that was getting broken up into little pieces. And so what happens is the water on the top side starts to go underneath the cement and sit between the cement on the top of this and in between, right on the other side of, on the other side of this, right above that. So it starts to rust through consistently. And this is a big problem that continues to happen. And so you can see this. That's hilarious. So for investors, my investors, everybody. So this is like one of the things that we're like, how is this like this? And people not fixing it when that's a gigantic liability. And it's because the person that owned this property, her husband had passed away, and this was just a giant headache. It was his project, and she's like, I want to get rid of it. Let me just get rid of it, and we can go there. And they're asking $990, and I came in at $650, and we ended up at $750. And that's because they go through and mark up prices like crazy. You never know what the real price is on these things because it's all negotiation. It's all what you want to find distress anywhere you can to try to make sure the deals work on the numbers, especially in this market. If you don't find the distressed deal or buy undervalued in this market, you're making a mistake because we're at the top of the market already. You want to make sure you can deal with that downside risk of the market, and so doing a value-add play is much safer because you're in a better equity position for that downside risk. You're also in a better cash flow position as well. So looking at that, everything you should be looking at should be value-add. Unless you're buying from me, you can buy it perfectly at top dollar. It's no problem. So,
Real quick, how quickly in the process do you get to see this?
Do I get to see this? I did a walkthrough before I even made an offer on the property and saw this, but you're saying from the whole inspection meeting? Okay, so normally the way the process works is you get it under contract, you order the inspection immediately, right? They do the whole outside and then they do a sampling of your units because it's costing a lot more money to go through every single unit. And we were like, let me see your worst units. We did a walkthrough beforehand with our entire team once it was under contract before the inspector even got out there. So we knew, hey, these are pretty similar. You're like, go to every single unit and check it out and see what major issues you're seeing comparatively so we can get our gauge for rehab per unit on the inside. And then we had one that was like, it was all down to the studs because there was fire damage in one of the units. That was like a $15,000 rehab. The rest were about $7,000. So for the interior of these units. And then we spent a bunch of money on the outside as well. This was like $45,000 just for this. Question?
Was this a good investment for you afterwards?
It was a great investment for me afterwards. So I had a partner on this that I split this with 50-50, and we sold it for $1.75 in 2 years, and we're into it for $1.1. So it was a great investment for us over 2 years. Yes, please.
What was your commission?
I didn't take the commission. I was the owner of the building, so I made the profit on that building instead of taking a commission. Okay.
Question?
Yes.
So for the tenants, did their rents get raised at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Average rents were about $550, and we raised the 2-bedroom units to $650 to $675, and we raised the singles to $550 for the 1-bedrooms. It's a different market, obviously, out there, but this is probably a B property or B minus property. It's no pool or anything like that. So, but I'd say a B area, C plus area, or something like that. It's right across the street from a fire station, right across the street from a church and things like that. And so my insurance guy was like, "Great, fire station's right there." So yeah, it's when you're looking at these, the way you add value is you renovate and increase rents. And so you have to do it. Sometimes you can do it slowly. Sometimes that's why this one took 2 years. Sometimes you do it very quickly. So, question here.
So, 2-year process. At what stages are you boots on the ground?
Is it you walk through the property, you see the investment, and you're managing the rehab from afar, or how often are you actually at the property?
In the beginning, I was going up to Tennessee always, like constantly on every big deal that we would buy. I'd fly out there, and I'd be out there once a month or once every 2 months or something like that to see it. Now I go out there twice a year because I have employees that keep me updated, and I have the right quality control. Actually, it was probably one of the best things that happened to me was being out of state, because I had to figure out how to get the right quality control piece and the right documentation and manage employees. And it was really great when I got a lot of buddies of mine that are full-time flippers, but they're at properties every day. They're doing this, boots on the ground. I interviewed a bunch of people and found the right people to come work with me. My rehab manager, he knows QuickBooks. Wow. My rehab manager that knows accounting, that's amazing. I take credit for his stuff all the time. It's awesome.
On this one where you raised the rents, it took 2 years. Did your vacancy spike, or did you keep
So normally when you're buying these, absolutely. So the first thing you do when you go take over a building like this is your once you close escrow on it, okay, you got to do all your due diligence, get your environmentals, get your rehab bids on the whole outside, the inside, get the inspections done, all that kind of stuff. Once you close escrow on that building, then you're going and starting the process here. Okay, the first thing you're doing is let me get all the outside done as fast as I can, and I'm going to immediately take all of the vacant units and do those. Okay? And I'm also going to go immediately kick out everybody that's behind and a pain in my butt. Then everyone else is staying put. Okay? And then that does a spike in vacancy. So your first year after you purchase something, when you're doing your projections, you want to make sure you bump that thing. Normally I underwrite around 10% for efficiency is what I think that I'll be at most of the time. But I always put like 20 in the second year or year one because I know it's going to bump, because I'm changing management. I'm being stringent. We don't rent to people that they have to pay us online. We don't do anything offline anymore. It's all an efficiency thing. If they don't pay online, they can't rent from us, because I'm not going to go collect cash. I'm not going to go deposit checks and have bounce checks. Sometimes they go through and they do an automatic transfer, and there's not enough in the account. It comes back and it charges them money on their side. And so that's the only thing that happens is we might get a $3 fee sometimes, and we charge it to them, and we get more $3 fees on our side. We charge them more money than it costs us to handle that. Yeah.
When it was all said and done, when you were complete, did this increase the value of the surrounding property?
Probably. We had a crazy person that owned the 60 unit next to me that I was trying to buy it, but he's crazy. and so a lot of the apartments in the area started getting renovated after we did ours. And so the one across the street got renovated by some guys out of Australia. And the one next door was the one that I was trying to buy, because combined, the financing works better. I could go get the financing on 90 units instead, but the problem was that the guy was like 40% vacant and trying to ask like double the price it was really worth in the first place, because he saw what I sold my building for. And he's like, great owner, you got this from that building, so I should get this. And I'm like, I sold that to an international client for tax purposes, and it was perfect. Yours is 40% vacant that needs $500,000 to $600,000 of renovation, and it's not the same thing. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the issues with some of the people. You just can't help them on all their numbers. Like I'm trying to show them the numbers, but I got to get a deal too. I'm not going to go through and do it without that. Question?
Yeah, so obviously you chose very stressed properties for both of these deals, and one panned out well, one didn't. And it seems like the first one, the damages were a lot more structural and foundational, and that's going to obviously bump up your rehab costs a lot. So I'd say that's kind of what made or break.
Yes, and so if there's structural foundation issues, it's not like I wouldn't do that again, but you're allocating a lot more money for that, and you're being way more careful, because those issues can cost a lot more, repairs to fix them. If you have to go replace the electrical in an entire property, and the plumbing, you might as well take everything down to studs, because It's way easier to do it that way than trying to run all new electrical if you're doing a giant rehab. But then when you're doing 30 units like this, you also get discounts. If I'm like, hey, I need to go buy 30 fridges, I need to go buy 30 of everything, you start to realize, wow, I'm getting some discounts on this. This is pretty decent. And you get some pull from, we go to Lowe's and have a corporate account there where they go check our numbers each time before we do a house or a rehab, where what happens is we give them a bunch of SKU numbers. Say, here's all the SKU numbers. We don't let contractors touch material. We do it all ourselves, and we pay them for labor. And so what happens is we get a bunch of SKU numbers, we submit it to the Lowe's corporate rep that works with us, and we have all of them. They're like, hey, you pick the new version of the stove, the old one's $100 less. Let me put that one in there for you instead. They'll go through the whole thing for you, and then they'll say, okay, it's ordered, it's on a pallet waiting for your guys to pick it up at Lowe's. So it's all ready for like one house, or sometimes we'll go buy a big chunk of stuff all at the same time. So, question here?
Can you elaborate on the foreign investors' tax benefits again?
So Japanese clients specifically can write off the building over a 5-year period of time. So normally you have depreciation that you get on properties that is you only get it on the building, not the land value. So out here in California, you're talking 40-50% land value, depending on where you're at, of course. And the rest is building because the land is worth way more. Out in Tennessee, the land's worth way less. It's like a 20% to 80% land building value. And so you get more depreciation benefits out of state because of that land value difference and that building value difference. And so
writing off in Japan.
Yeah, they're writing off for Japanese tax law specifically, not U.S. tax law. And so there's also international compliance with a lot of the international clients where they have to get U.S. tax ID numbers, they have to do estate planning issues, there's a ton of different things that they have to do, but we have it pretty streamlined with translation services and things like that for them now, so it works pretty well. But yes, if you want to talk more about the international stuff, I'll definitely help you out with that. So yeah, this deal, it had some minor issues on the outside, not a ton, but needed landscaping, needed some new AC units, and AC units are expensive. Like, these things are not cheap to replace. It's like $3,000 a pop, to do an HVAC system, or 3 or 4 depending on the size of the units. So, and these all had breakers too. Or, I'm sorry, they had the fuse boxes instead of breakers. And so your insurance company is going to kill you if you have fuse boxes instead of breakers in your property. They will not insure you if you have that. So if you're buying a building that's old enough to have that, you better fix it. Otherwise, your insurance company is going to cancel you. Okay? So, and if you say that you don't have fuse boxes and you do, you just gave them a complete out for any liability issue you have. If you get sued, they're like, oh, wow, you told us you had fuse boxes. Sorry, no claim. So these are the issues. You don't ever lie to your insurance company.
And that's one of the factors you got to factor in, because tenants already know that they got electric, so you can't add more value.
Right. Yeah, it's $600 a box.
Upgrading an older building, a lot more 30 amp systems like that 1910 building. So you got to upgrade it to 100 amp system. Just that upgrade can cost $60,000.
The way the electrical got screwed in the first place on that building is they put boxes down there that were not heavy enough for the load in the first place, and the wiring couldn't handle it. And you're like, great.
Old knob and tube. So you got that fire hazard.
It's a big problem.
One of the big added values on that older building is you've got the plumbing all tore apart.
Yep.
Adding washer and dryer. Stackable washer and dryer, extra $50, $75 a month in rent, and a lot.
Yeah, totally. This place has it had washer and dryer hookups, and the washer was in the kitchen area, and the dryer hookup was in one of the rooms. And we're like, this doesn't really work. So we'll leave the platform there if they want to use like a little piece of tile for the dryer in there, but we're not going to go supply them. And we put a cap on there so that they didn't have to do that. There was a laundromat around the block, so on these ones. But that was a tough one because
that's what we did. We did the stackable washer and
dryer.
dryer.
It worked really well.
Yeah.
So let's see what else is on this one. So these are so you can see these are the old electrical here that we have to replace every time because it's a fire hazard. So normally when I'm looking at a single family home or one building, I'm looking for in all these notes right here, say, okay, 30-gallon water here, 2005. How long does the water heater last? 10 to 15 if you're lucky. If they're old, they're 30. They last 30 years, the old ones. The new ones now, it's like, 10 and you're out. So every time they get to like 7 or 8 years on our flips, we replace them anyways. Just because, I'm not going to take the risk for one of my clients having to deal with it afterwards. So, but you can see, like just basic random repairs, not any major issues. And then this is what it looked like after we were finished with this thing, where, just cleaning it up. So you guys can see, just basic, nothing major, cabinets, countertops. This is outside. We cleaned up the outside really, really well. Put signage. We put exterior lighting, new exterior lighting, things like that as well. New landscaping on the inside, painted all this, and redid all the wrought iron work. So it took a minute to get this. All this had to be completely sealed on the top as well. So we had to reseal all of that stuff to make sure the water intrusion. We put gated access because it's super important. So, what did you say, Rick? Oh, he's giving me my pizza for later. That's awesome. I don't eat ever. I just work all the time. So I get up at 5 because of my 2-year-old, my 2-month-old, and that's it. And then we also use a software called Punch that gets this layout. Now, what's the important piece of this layout? You start to understand every single door, every window, the square footage for the carpet in each room, the square footage for the paint in each room. And now you can allocate these to be able to really estimate your rehabs really, really close. And it's always an estimate. You're never going to be right. That's why you have buffers in place, okay? Unless you've been doing this for like 20 years, So, let's see here. So, one other thing, so looking at this, Rickroll, let me make this bigger. So this is what I was using when I started to go through this. You can see it was current at 450. I had originally said market at 550 and then 650 for the other ones. These were all the current ones here, conservative, and then I said these ones are renovated right now. I think this was my initial analysis on this. And so I'm basically just coming in here and saying, okay, this is current. This is what I think market is going to be specifically. And so here's my differences in cash flow, which my ROI at 27% if I'm able to do that. Okay, and put, rehab reserve per unit was 5,100, for these rest of these 16 units. And so, and this was the initial analysis on what I felt really needed to be renovated. We ended up renovating all of them at the end of the day and getting higher rents on all of them. So, we also have, so this was the financial projections that I put together on this. So whenever I'm selling a property, you want to be able to go through and give people the right information on this. So I sold this thing for top dollar, okay? This property I ended up selling, actually this one I ended up selling for $1.735 million on this is what the final pricing was on this. I had it at $1.85 on this originally, and I was definitely pushing it, but that's a cap rate of 6.33%, so obviously tough, but it's fully renovated. And I'm breaking down the math on all of this. I'm basically saying, here's their cap rate, here's their cash flow year one, here's their ROI for this period, here's their down payment. This person actually bought this in cash for me, so they didn't actually use financing. And this was old, showing a 4% interest rate. Now it's more like 5.5 to 5.75, depending on the loan. You're going really big, you're getting better financing on some of that stuff as well. So you can get 4.5 and 4.75 if you're going millions of dollars. There's a lot less lenders out there that are willing to do properties that are under $1 million, and even far less under $500,000. So those lenders are going to local markets, the local banks and things like that, to find those lenders that will loan on smaller buildings. Otherwise, the national lenders, this is not worth their time. A lot of them deal with stuff that's $5, $10, $20 million, and they're like, why am I going to deal with anything less than $1 million? It doesn't make me the same amount of money for the same amount of work. Okay, so some of those things are, I think, extremely important to understand when you're buying a building. what financing is going to be there? Am I going to be able to get a construction loan? What is happening there? Do I need to raise all private money because the bank won't touch this? So there's a lot of things that go along with that. So here's a basic overview of some of the expenses involved: vacancy, concessions, bad debts, repairs and maintenance, grounds, property management, taxes, insurance, utilities. There's also, potentially legal fees, potentially admin costs. You might have payroll for a bigger unit where you got to pay an on-site manager. So, question here.
Please explain that to them that this is not a normal portfolio performance. This is actually an excellent. It's actually true.
But this is what's cool on these markets. This is a 2.21% debt service coverage ratio on this building. And so, I'm showing you the pictures of this thing. I show the layout, and that's it. Very simple. It's not like the giant broker ones that give you every single stupid stat on the market, and you're like, I just don't care. Like half that stuff. Are you really going to read an 80-page package that some of these brokers pull off a CoStar for you and give it to you? Yeah, it's cool to understand the market one time, but like after that, you're going, thanks for the fluff. I don't need that. I need comps. That's what I need. I need my construction costs. That's what I need. So these are the things that you want to kind of take a look at.
Question.
Yes.
What's a cap rate?
Cap rate. Okay, sorry. I start speaking in terms that are tough. So cap rate is basically if you bought a building all cash, what's your return on investment for your net cash flow? So if you bought a building for $1 million and you make $100,000 a year, not concerning any debt, $100,000, it would be a 10 cap, right? So you're making 10% on your money. So it's basically the interest rate you make in cash excluding financing. Your return on investment is how much cash you're making for your down payment. Right, and you can boost your return on investment with the financing component. Okay, so in addition to that, where the other one will go. So this I think is really important to understand. Construction contracts. Okay, if you don't use a construction contract for each piece of your job, it's going to cost you at some point. Okay. I've actually used them, and it still costs me money. So I had a building where the guy was like 5 months over budget, and I'm telling him the whole time, every single time, hey, you're coming up on your date. You're coming up on your date. We have a penalty clause in there. I'm not trying to hurt you on this, but you're coming up really close, and we have a long way to go. I even told them that if you get it done faster, we put bonuses in place for them. If they get it done later, then there's penalties. And I was going to charge him a $13,000 penalty at the end of the day on like a $500,000 construction contract. And the guy was hooing and hawing, saying he's going to put a lien on the property and all this stuff. And I knew he was bad with money when he's asking me how I get licensed and bonded, with some big construction contract. And he's like, I'm like, well, then you're going to get audited financials for those from a CPA firm. I'm like, well, how do you know where you're at right now with your money? How cleaned up are you now? So I can understand how far you need to come to get to that audited financials point. He's like, oh, if I have money in the bank, then I'm doing good. I'm like, I just gave you 30 grand, man, to do this project. After that, I'm like, no. We're controlling all materials now. After I heard that, I was like, okay, I'll help you any way I can, but yeah, I'm not taking any more risk here. So these contracts here, there's some specific stipulations that you need to make sure that you understand. Okay, so if anybody needs this, I can provide you guys, like a PDF of this. But you should have an attorney in the market you're doing business in do this. So I basically, all payments applications must be submitted with a matching conditional, partial, or full lien waiver. So what happens if he goes and gets his plumber to come into my property and do all the work, and I go pay him for it, and then he doesn't pay his plumber? His plumber can put a lien on my property. Okay? I'm liable. Okay? He's basically acting as my agent here, but I can sue him for this later, for that stuff. But so every time you have payments that go to specific outside subcontractors or them, you got to get the lien waiver signed for that piece that you paid. Okay? Because if you don't do that, they can get you in the long run. And is there any contractors in the room? Okay, there you go. I'm not gonna screw you too much. So, don't worry. So I'm sure you're the good one out of the 900 that I've seen. No. No, we have some actually amazing contractors now. The biggest thing with contractors is start off with something small. Get to know them a little bit. Get to know how they act. So the biggest challenge is contractors, the way they eat, okay, is the way they keep more jobs coming, is they have to go find that next job. Whether they're in the middle of your job or not, they're constantly marketing for their next job, right? And so a lot of times, and not always, a lot of times they will leave your job to go to another job to get that started because they're like, oh, I got you on the hook, and they're going back and forth and things like that. And so you got to avoid that stuff. And what I found is that you want to, what we do on our single family homes, the way we do all these consistently every month, and we have overages and time overages and things like that, and our quality control is tight. We have people meeting people at properties multiple times a week to say, what are we going to do with the next? What are we going to do this next couple of days? Okay, I'll be here at the end of the week, and we'll see how far you got. And it's those types of things, and keeping up on them, saying that you didn't do what you said you're going to do. I'm going to meet you here every single time. And contractors hate it when you meet them there every single time. But at the same time, you're like, I'm looking at efficiencies. This is costing me money. And so if you're doing this as a business, managing the contractors is one of the most important pieces. So if you're not good at it, I would recommend all day. If someone has a job that they can't be there all the time and actively manage a contractor on a big construction job, hire somebody. Pay them $2,500 to manage a job for a couple months. Pay them, maybe it's not $2,500 out here. But well, it depends on how much they're doing, right? Like how much if they're meeting there every week, like multiple times, and they're just there for an hour, I don't know. Just tally up how much time you really think it's going to be. Depends on how big the job is. I'm talking about a single family home that takes 3 weeks or something like that to finish or a month, Question?
Yeah, so do you do like payment installations for your builders or contractors?
Do what?
Installations, like installment payments. So you do half the job and I'll pay this much. And then
we will go through, a lot of times we make sure that they are they're compensated for what they had to pay their people. So they typically don't make the profit until the end, and we always withhold 10% until we do our inspections. And so whether that's a plumbing or electrical or major construction piece of it, we'll do that with each major construction piece. And we do these contracts for each major construction piece too, because we go to different vendors a lot of times for these. If you're going to a general contractor, you want to make sure that you understand how good their guys are too, because sometimes they can be horrible. And I went to outside generals in the past that the guy was like telling me, oh, it's going to be $72,000 for all of your AC units for this project, and we're getting quotes at 56. And he's like, I'm like, well, who's the contractor for this? And he's like, oh, it's my son. And I'm like, well, that's a conflict of interest, dude. Like, that's not a real quote. Then I just got a $56,000 quote over here. Why are you charging me $72,000? Here's what the cost of the materials are. Here's how long it takes to go put it in. And so when you're negotiating with contractors, I'm sorry, bro, but you've been a long time FIBI member, so it's all good, dude. So contractors, when you're negotiating with them, you want to understand how much materials costs. Because if they're pricing it together, it's really hard. And they got some great sources, so sometimes you want to go with them because they got the better source. Especially if you don't have as much experience or volume as we do, you're not going to have the same sources they do. They're going to find the better pricing. Go ahead.
So you act as the GC and you subcontract the trades?
For the most part. Okay. So some of the contractors that we use right now are really good, and they have a lot of pride in what they do. And if we go through a punch list afterwards, he's mad at his guys for missing these because we go through with a blue tape walkthrough and we're like, tape everything that we're fixing, and sometimes they take the tape off. That doesn't need it. We're like, we put it here for a reason, the door sticks or whatever, So it's little things like that. But when you're negotiating with the contractors, to know the construction material cost, and then understanding how long it takes them to do a job, to do a piece of that job. So my GC, or my construction manager out in Tennessee that works with me full time, he will go through, and he has a lot of construction experience himself. He used to help do construction and build houses and work for big hotels where he was like detailed, meticulous on numbers and all that stuff. And so I have him going through and saying he thinks it takes less than 5 minutes to go, or it's like 2 minutes really, to go replace an outlet. And he says, that's a $15 or, an outlet situation. If it's an electrician, then you're talking about $60 an hour, type job or something like that. Out here it's more, of course. So, and especially now when contractors are really in demand, right? Because everyone's building and flipping and doing everything because the market's good. But, so to understand how long something takes is super important, because then you can extrapolate how much they're making per hour and to see if it's right for what you guys are actually paying. Okay? If you're like, well, an AC unit is $3,500 but he's charging me $5,500 and it takes the guy 2 hours max to go put everything in and make sure it's all working and everything, then how much are they charging you per hour? So it's like looking at those items and saying, what am I missing here? And talking with the contractors, because every time you get a new quote from a contractor, they're not stupid. It's like, hey, I'm going to go sell a house. How much do you want to pay for it? It's like they're going to come in and say, oh, you want to quote this job? I'm going to be here.
What's your budget?
Yeah, what's your budget for this, right? But sometimes they're really honest contractors, and you've got good people working for you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's human nature to say, contractors know if they work for homeowners versus investors, they get way more money. Is that right? Am I wrong?
Commercial side.
Oh, okay, never mind. Totally different then. Yeah. You got your numbers hitting hard from the corporate guys. So understanding this stuff is very, very key when you're doing these construction jobs, because if you don't know and you don't break down the math, it's easy for people to steal from you or overcharge for you, and it's important to just know your numbers on that side. Okay? Question?
Just about that. One thing that just has been happening to us is like our contractor will say, my cousin can get a really great deal on all your roofing supplies. This much new roof for $3,000, right? And if you have no idea, it sounds like a great deal. I called around, and it turned out that it should have been only $2,000.
Yeah. Well, and the materials, it's like you go price it out. So we just did a job out here in California on our house. We bought a 1,100 square foot house. We had 900 square feet. My wife was pricing all the materials out and everything herself and everything. I made her do it because I'm like, I don't want to do this. You design everything you want. Just give me the bill. I don't want to do it. You don't make me pick out materials. This is why I like being out here versus out in Tennessee. And everything's cookie cutter, same dark gray. So when you're doing these things, you have to understand what you're buying too, right? Like, don't go and buy white carpet for your rental. Trust me, I've stayed in rentals with white carpets, and you're like, what is wrong with you? You move out or you move in and you realize all they did was steam clean the carpets, and it all comes back up. So then when you move out, you're like, I'm going to steam clean the carpets, and it's going to come up in 3 months. Great, So, but you get darker carpet, you get certain types of darker paint that we always do the two-tone paint because it makes it pop. You do little things like there's $200 backsplashes you can put on stuff to make the whole kitchen pop. It's not super expensive if you're doing cookie cutter rentals. You can get Home Depot type cabinets, but the nicer ones that aren't super cheap, for like a lot of these things, and they look great. You can also spray stuff down and redo this stuff and not have to do it, but sometimes you have to do it. It's really, really important. So looking at some of these construction contracts, we require the lane waivers for anything over 1,000 on this one. So let me make this a little bit smaller so that I can see a little better. So we always want to get their certificate of insurance. So their general liability and workers' comp, okay? And any of their subs, you want their workers' comp as well. So if they have outside subs, you want to make sure you see theirs as well. You do a warranty letter. We require them to warranty their work for a year on their major construction stuff. We have to have this contract, a W-9, their sales certificates, and things like that. Okay, that's just page 1. So we start getting into, we need their social security number on this. We say, here is, this one was for the wrought iron replacement. See Exhibit A, which outlines all of the detail of what we expect out of that job, so that way it's completely detailed out and there's no misunderstandings for, this job specifically. Governing law, this is all legal work, right? Legal paperwork. So contract documents, subcontractor material, supplier list form. So we want to know where, like, if we're going to go and have, like in this job, there's a wrought iron specialist, right? So we're not going to go buy the materials ourselves for the wrought iron, right? Because these guys do that specifically. So we want to make sure that, we have who they're buying their stuff from and everything so that we can see, how much those things cost and that type of stuff, having full disclosure. So, let's see, termination by owner, guarantee and warranty. There's the insurance. We require $1 million aggregate policy here. Bodily injury and commercial general liability, $1 million. Umbrella coverage, bodily injury coverage, and then auto policy coverage. If they are driving to go get materials at Home Depot from your job and they get in a car accident, you can get sued. They're working technically for you at that time, so you want to make sure they have proper auto coverage limits. So do they have that? And is it a commercial policy, right? If you have a normal policy, which a lot of people do, then and you're at work, the insurance company can say, well, you're doing stuff for work. You should have had a commercial policy for this. So just some of these little things could be issues down the line. I'm telling you every way you guys can lose money because, if you don't understand it, there's a lot of risks there. And so part of the analysis of these is understanding your risks and how you mitigate the risks, because they're all mitigatable. And to me, if you guys think about it, if you're looking at, a 1.735 sale and, 1.1 purchase, I'm going to take some risk for that, right? But I'm going to make sure that I got everything buttoned up as best as I know how. And the way you lose money is you don't know how. You don't know how to button it up, so, or something happens and, you mess up or something, right? So indemnity, any extras, let's see, where am I looking here? So I can send you guys this contract just so you guys can understand some of these things in here. So this is like the material supplier list. We want all the information for them on these things. Let's see, this is the partial lien waiver for them on this job. You get it notarized as well. Here's a full lien waiver on the whole thing. So as jobs happen, you start to get that partial and then the full once they're finished. And then the warranty and things like that. So if you guys are interested in that, I can send that to you guys so you understand that. This is an opinion letter that I did for one of my international clients saying here's the approach that we came up for the construction costs and what the land and building was worth and what the percentages are here and some of the appraised values and things like that in those areas. It came up with the land and building split for them so that they could get a 91 or 92% depreciation rate for my international clients on this. And so obviously the accounting skill sets help substantially in this. And then I break down the rehab and all that kind of fun stuff. Question? Are you good? Okay. Anybody else? We're good? You guys are all like, what are you talking about? Crazy. So here's another one on Spotswood that we just finished. I bought this building, so this is craziness. I bought this building for $149,000 for 19 units. Okay. It was a mess. Okay. We put over $600,000 into it. We're into it for about $9 million when we're finished, and we just sold it for $1.85 million. So yeah, look at that. It's fun. Thank God I live in California. So you can get the point of this. This is craziness. So all boarded up, everything. Like it was madness. There was one person living in this complex when we bought it. And he wasn't paying rent. I'm like, dude, don't worry about it, bro. Just move out when we can. We're going to do construction on this. We walked through his house and there's like roaches everywhere. We're like, ugh. Like, I'm sorry, just live here for free then until for like another month, then you can leave. And so this is what it looked like afterwards.
What city?
This is in Memphis.
Can you repeat those numbers again? Purchase price?
Purchased $149,000, and rehab was like a little bit over $6. We're into it for about $9 when we're finished with everything, including holding costs. We sold it for $1.85 in cash. to an international client.
How many units were there?
It was 19, and they were perfect. Not a single thing wrong. Brand new plumbing, electrical, brand new HVAC, brand new everything.
So when you first bought the house, it cost like $169,000.
$149,000
And
when I
then
bought the
sold
building.
it for $1.8 million.
Yeah, but we put about we were into it for $900,000 after all the costs. Okay.
After renovations, right?
Yes. Exactly. Questions?
How'd you fund it?
That was fun. I wish I would have borrowed the money instead of partnering on this one, but obviously. So a lot of these that I do, I will bring in private investor capital to fund this thing. You know, the 30 unit I initially brought in like 10% money to take it down, and then brought in an equity partner because we're going to refinance and hold it. And then the buyer came by and I'm like, I'm going to sell this because it's top dollar, right? And so a lot of times we fund it with private investor capital. It depends on the size of the deal. Right? If it's like $1 million or less, like these ones are pretty close to $1 million, a lot of times I can bring in private clients for this. If you're talking about a $4 million, $5 million plus deal or a big equity raise, then that's typically when you've got to go into the syndication aspect of things. And what happens is you're pooling a bunch of investor money together that are going to invest with you, but that's a security. So you have to have a license with the SEC when you're pooling investor money together like that. Question?
Wait, so you said you buy it for under $10,000 door, you're sold for $88,000 door?
Yeah, but I mean, it was perfect. So there was like, I mean, this thing was like nothing wrong with it at all, you know? So yeah, I mean, this is our photographer that we had come and do this, the little video thing on this building. And I mean, we gated access and everything to the property is really, really desirable. This is in an area that's up and coming in Memphis. And of course, like right when we bought, so we got a gray stop sign there because someone ran into the door. We're like, great. And lately we put a video camera up here so that we can show that down there so that if we ever have a problem, we're like, yeah, you did it. We see your license plate. Sorry. Because people are stupid and they run into stuff. In our short-term rentals, it's kind of funny to realize the basic knowledge of some people. They're walking up to our door on one of our short-term rentals, pushing the video doorbell button over and over and over again instead of the lock button, the deadbolt, the quick set deadbolt thing. And you're like, it's a doorbell, And they're like complaining that they can't get into the property. So you're like, wow, But
did you consider just tearing it down and building new?
Yeah, but it was already down to the studs and the foundation. The structural component was good, and it's all brick on the outside. It's all brick on the outside. You've got a good base right there. You might have to do some framing and stuff like that, but it's not horrible, So one of the units in this had like water damage on, like basically from like the knee down, and like some of the baseboards and stuff like that. Like he tore all of it out, like in those units, and basically redid everything inside, but still had the structure, So
Came out nice.
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, spraying and all that. My guys did an awesome job on this. They're unbelievable. And I'm making my rehab manager a partner of the management company so I can retire him later because he deserves it.
How long did it take you from start to finish this and get things done?
So the hardest part of this was the financing because I hadn't borrowed money other than from one bank before on this, and it was scary for a lot of people because they're like, you're buying for $149, So what we did is I brought in 2 equity partners on this to put in $150,000 each. I put in $11,000. That's all I had to put in, and I did all the work, And what's interesting is they were passive investors. I gave them 33% each, and I took 33% of the deal. Okay. I also got a commission first for selling it of 6% at the top dollar, then did the 33% because I'm like, I'm not going to go sell it for top dollar unless I get at least something better out of it because you're not getting this, So and they made over 150% return on their money.
Yeah.
And I just wish I would have borrowed it like 8 to 10%. It's like, damn! But, it was a big risk, right? And the bank said, hey, you will put in $300,000 first into the construction, and we'll give you a $500,000 construction loan. And as you put that in, once that whole $300,000 is put in, we'll start giving you money on the rehab. $150,000 was already there for the purchase, and closer to $200,000 from that. So we have like another for holding costs and things like that. But it took like 6-7 months to get the right financing in place, find that because I had never done a construction loan before, and so to understand how that worked and how the rehab draws work. So that's what's cool is that this one here, like this is an example of, where'd that go? So this is like an example of some of the draws that happen where you're like, okay, you got the roof replacement, carpentry, exterior paint, doors, windows, every little piece, and you're submitting this to the bank every time as far as what was paid for already, and you're providing them receipts and showing them. And you usually have a deposit relationship with that bank too initially for them to want to lend to you, especially if you're new. And this is the problem is that if you're out of state, they're scared to death of you. So if you're like, oh, I live in California, nobody wants to lend to you. Unless I show them I own a management company there, we've done 700 flips here, we've done, have a huge base, and I'm able to explain to the bank and sit down and meet with them to actually talk with a local bank that does this type of financing. Because a $500,000 loan is tough for commercial, right? Anything under $1 million is very difficult. You don't really have the problem here in California, right? So looking at this, we have to submit this every time to the bank. This is the layout of one of those units, or actually this is the layout of the landscaping that we did. So we just had this whole thing put together on the landscape. We used the survey for that. So this was the survey that we had done on the project. Then we had the first and second floors here on the layouts. So we can get all the specs on everything on this. This is done in a software called Punch, again. If you guys didn't get that the first time, it's a great software. It's not that expensive to be able to do this. We had these. This was my original starting point, and what it ended up being at the end of the day on this project. So the roofing, carpentry, we broke it down into exterior, interior, site improvements, general, and then we ended up being $27,000 over budget on this, in the overage on this project. So with everything, it was not too bad. But this is how you break it down, and we come with the overages and unders on all those things. Okay. Let's see here. So I went over all that.
What's that software called?
Punch, P-U-N-C-H. Okay. This is our Little Rock property that we just bought. So this building, we bought this for $430,000. Okay, and these are before pictures on the property. It's in construction right now. These are the estimated cash flows on the project, just very generally, and they're totally wrong. Because I'm coming up with estimates initially, right? We're mid-construction. How do I know what my monthly utilities are going to be? This thing had like 6 or 7 people living in it it was a mess. I mean, it's disgusting. 15 doors. And it's right in the middle of downtown Little Rock. Okay? So this is what's cool.
30,000 a door.
This building, this is downtown Little Rock right here, and this is where my building is. This is my building. This is the Arkansas Secretary of State, NBC, Republican National Headquarters, whether you like that or not. AT&T, State Capitol. We had the Department of Education over here. The Department of Real Estate over here. It was nuts. And this is the only multifamily building in this whole area. And so what we're doing with this, after we're finished with the construction, I have a Japanese client that wants to buy it from me now for 1.5. We're going to be into it for about $900,000 on this one as well. And what's interesting, though, is I can't sell it to them because we're going to do short-term rentals on the entire building, which will create a cash flow of an extra $180,000 a year, $1,000 per unit per month times 12 months. Business brokers I've been talking with to understand how much I can sell the cash flow with the building with. So if I get 1.5 approximately for the building, and I can go through and sell the business with it, according to some of the business brokers I've talked with, I can get an extra $1.8 million for the business too. But do I want to give up $180,000 a year cash flow? Is that 10%? Question here.
What's the time frame on that business? Like how much in advance of the cash flow? How do you determine that?
On which
like selling the business with it, even though it's future cash flows. Like
So according to the brokers that I talked to, like making 10% on your money on revenue, on net revenue, is reasonable. A lot of times you can even get, for bigger businesses and stuff like that, you can get even a lot more. And so I'm just basically talking with the brokers at this point. I don't know what that exit strategy is going to look like yet, but I'm looking at this one worst case scenario, I make an extra $1.8 million. That's amazing, So hold on one second, we're going to go here and I'll come back.
because when you're buying the 1920s, 1930s, or even any of these older buildings, at what point are you worried about maybe the fire inspector coming in or any of these other departments and saying, surprise, there's a new code that brings the whole building up to a specific that wasn't planned for this?
So one, before we start the project, we go to code enforcement immediately. And then we actually, on this one, it's funny, we had already called about the lead-based paint and stuff like that because we're removing everything in this property.
So this is still the under contract part, but you haven't. This is part of the inspection.
So the contractor that we had to go bid this project, they first give us our numbers, and while we're in escrow, they're going to code and see if there's going to be any problems with that, making sure that you're going to be good on the construction. But a lot of these Midwest markets, they're very, very, laws are very in favor of the owner of these buildings or the landlords, and so you don't have as many problems. Like here in California, the tenant landlord laws, for example, are horrible in comparison. I can get somebody else a couple of weeks out of state versus here, if you go wrong, you can be 6 months or a year and they're squatting. Someone can come to your house and squat and just be like, yeah, I live here. You're like, kick me out and evict me. You have no lease, right? And like out there, we know about the law, but people probably go out there with guns going, get out of my house, So a lot of times I've heard about people stealing the front door, which is illegal, but it's like, you really want to do that sometimes, though. You really do, But this building looks really interesting from that perspective. We're buying right now another 3-unit, another 8-unit, and another 5-unit out there to do the same type of strategy in different areas there right now. So it's kind of interesting. We also just recently bought a commercial building. It's our first commercial building, and we're going to have a brokerage in, and it looks like we're going to be able to make another $250,000 on that one too. We bought it for $350. We're going to be or $250. I think we'll be into it for about $450, and I think we can sell it for about $750, which is interesting. And so it's all value-add construction each and every time. And so this is actually a really, really safe area. It's not bad at all. At first, I was like looking at the street view, going, I'm not sure. And then I went out there, and it's amazing. So I was a little nervous about it at first, but it's kind of interesting. So I actually raised money on the purchase here for $430,000 from a Japanese client that we have translations and our website's in Japanese and everything. I met somebody in the very beginning of my real estate career that has a ton of relationships in Japan. So then we started a system there, and then now I have translators. I have a ton of different liaisons to help me in different ways. So I raised this at 7% from a private investor for $430,000 for 3 years, interest or amortized over. I think this is 30 years. Is that right? Yeah. Yes. I can't remember the. Oh, it's 36 payments is what it's showing, but it's a 30-year amortization on here as well. So pretty decent for just private money, And then I raise the rest. I either put my own money in or I raise the rest myself. So this is an estimate. So this is like the costs that are going into it up front when you're actually buying the building, okay? And these are a little bit over estimates, but these are how I break this down. So you have a purchase price, you have closing costs, and your repair. So closing costs are $104, and I'll break that down for you. But repair escrows, and then so we're looking at being in it for about $930. So legal fees, property inspection, lead-based paint inspection, lender fees if we're using lenders involved that are not private, closing costs involved, reserves for lender required reserves. So I held back an entire year of interest in this because you've got to pay your investors that, and I did it at a 10% rate. So I'm trying to go through and build as much as I can here, almost a whole year. So real estate taxes, insurance, you've got to pay the entire insurance up front on these projects. So you better have really good insurance with builder's risk coverage, huge general liability policies on these things, and have it in an LLC as well. Don't ever try to do a giant construction job in your own name. Okay? It's just, especially, it depends on what you're trying to protect. If you don't own anything in the first place or don't have income streams, it's easier, but question.
On your legal fees, I saw that. Does that include California's $800 or is that just their state?
So asset protection is a whole other topic, like a huge topic. So, but each state is different. So some states like Tennessee, if I own commercial property or even residential property inside of an LLC that's a California LLC that I will register there in Tennessee, there's a franchise and excise tax of 6%. Otherwise, there's no state income taxes. There's an exemption though. If you have a Tennessee LLC specifically, and and it's 95% family owned, and it's all residential property, there's no tax. So if you own commercial property, you're being taxed at the 6% franchise tax. There's an expense, a flow-through expense that needs to be put in. Okay? Does that make sense? So, in addition to that, so this was the construction breakdown. This was a quick and dirty one that we said we're doing first before we actually go through, and I had my team on the ground out there, which is a different team than my other team, but we had them come up with this estimate first, and which we think is a way over estimate, but at the same time, we're first doing all demo before we perfect this. We need to open up all walls and everything on a building like this before the contractor can get a real quote, right? Because there's so much stuff they find. They found in this building, they found an old stairway that was walled in, and it was like the top of the stairway was like cutting off the head of one of the showers, where like you're literally ducking like this, and the thing's coming in here like, what? You got to have like a shorter person in here, because anybody that's tall, you hit their head on the side, So, I mean, it's interesting, some of the things you see in some of these. They basically drywalled in all of the fireplaces and walled them up. So what we're doing with those is we're taking them out, cleaning them up, not keeping traditional fireplaces, but putting heating units and things like that in there, so it's like a fake fireplace, So that's basically this one. This Boylston one is kind of interesting. So this one, I'm pulling comps. So my family owns this property up in Seattle. It's one of the best areas you can buy it, okay? 816 Boylston Avenue in Seattle, Washington. Let me show you that's this. What was it? 1816. So scrolling out here. So right in the heart of Seattle here, this is a block away from the new Amazon headquarters. Of course, this is not the property. I have no idea what the heck is happening there. That is weird. 16 Boylston Avenue, Seattle, Washington. That's the location. It's not the street view. So the new Amazon building is literally right here. And they're putting all kinds of new railways and all kinds of stuff down there. And so I'm helping my family because they're saying, hey, this thing is cash flowing horribly because it's in downtown Seattle and it's 32 units. And so I came in and started realizing, okay, wow, their average rents were $14.60 a unit, okay? And these are the rent comps for the same size of units. Why am I not doing this? Okay. So you're looking at an average of $16.75 for the one bedrooms and $22.95 for the two bedrooms. Do you think this was underperforming? Yeah. It's unbelievable. And so what I'm doing here is I'm pulling all these and I'm saying, hey, what is this column? What's the differences between amenities here, the location, all of the differences, and trying to come up with your best estimate of what you think this thing should comp out at, and what you think you can get it rated for. Okay? And it's an art. It's not a science, right? You could be totally wrong and screw yourself really bad. Okay, so you want to be conservative. I told them, even though I'm seeing $22.95, I said, look, I think you should, lower it a little bit. I said the average rents were like $1,800 when I was doing my analysis for them because I don't want them to go kick everybody out right away on a building like this. This also has 42 parking spots. And so this first one is a little off. Let me go.
How many units?
This is 32 units. So this is what CoStar gives you. So most brokers will be able to give you this. Commercial brokers typically have access to CoStar now. It's basically the MLS for multifamily now. You also have an MLS in each individual market. And so they give you 35-page report on everything that's happening. You're looking at this transaction price per unit. You're going, what the hell am I looking at? This looks like mold. It looks like a mold thing. This is what I'm saying when they provide you these things. Yeah, it's cool to look at. But what the heck does it do for me? When I'm analyzing this, estimated price per square foot, what does this chart do for me in reality? Yeah, it's pretty for an investor, but like in reality, if they're a smart investor, they're looking at this briefly and saying, okay, who cares? Let me see the other metrics. But national apartment prices, cap rates. What do I need national apartment price cap rates for, and specifically down there? So I'm just, these are the things that it's like fluff, right? So Moody, Outlook. But these are all the different data sources, data things you can get, the fundamentals outlook, national trends, apartment details, the labor constraints are tight right now, construction delays are mounted, whatever, okay? So I went through this whole list, and I'm going to break this down for you. I'm going to show you guys this stuff, even though it's personal to our family. So let me make this bigger, because you guys are going to be like, what are you doing me?
How long have you guys had this?
My grandfather bought this. My grandfather bought this in, I don't remember what the purchase price was. It was probably like $30,000 or something like that back in the day. But he was telling my family, if you ever sell this, I'm going to kill you, because it's such a great location, right? But you're also counterbalancing that with cap rate and things like that. But if you're getting during a downturn of the market, their considerations are, how much can I increase cash flow now? Should we sell in the first place? And what's the replacement property going to be if they do want to do a 1031 exchange? So what kind of problem is this when you have this fully paid off, fully depreciated, right? And you're trying to do a 1031 exchange on a $11, $12 million building, which is what this supposedly is worth right now based on the current cash flow, which in reality, we can increase the cash flow on this thing by like $200,000 a year, and it should be worth like $14, $15 million on that building, just from increasing current cash flow. And so if you're going through and trying to analyze this for cash flow, you're saying, hey, this is the annualized cash flow now. So they gave me year to date for January through December. They said, here's your cash flow now. So now I had to take out some personal expenses because they had cell phones in there. They were paying themselves a management fee. They're like doing all kinds of crap, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Let's take all that. They're giving the year-to-date cash flows to the brokers, not telling them about all the, they're like, yeah, I got a cell phone bill in there. You're like, well, that is not even close to all my personal expenses, And so they're giving them those items, and it's important to basically understand, I got to show the brokers what reality is, and what I see that is to get the right information. So I went and interviewed a bunch of brokers for this to understand, what I think the rents were, and I confirmed everything that I was thinking on that. It's exactly what they were thinking on the rents for this. So just with rents alone, I can increase from $560 to $691, going from an average of a $1,460 rent to an $1,800 rent, which the average based on those comps was like $1,985. Because I'm like, I don't want to go crazy, and you don't want to go and raise it to the top of the market, right at the top of the market, because as soon as the market changes and there's a downside in your rents, because rents drop during down markets like that, then you have a bunch of tenants moving out, and your cash flow goes down. So you don't want to be top dollar on every aspect of these rents. So in addition to that, so this is, let me make this a little bigger. So here's my annualized here. Vacancy rate was 3%. Utilities. This is a utilities chargeback. Right now, if I took the utilities and brought them to $38.5 a month, which is basically doubling the utility charges for those tenants, it covers our utilities 100% instead of just charging this. The parking down there. They literally are incentivizing you to have no parking and new construction down there. So parking is a huge amenity. This place has 42 spots. Some of the comps were telling us they would pay $250 a spot for this. So I went to $150 a spot, and it increased cash flow from $23,000 to $75,000 a year just with that alone. So laundry, I put nothing there, even though there's new laundry units now that can actually go through and charge more money. They're more efficient with water savings. There's a lot of different ways to boost that revenue. Security deposits forfeited, late charges. So late charges, most of these are run by mom and pop, my family, themselves. They don't have management softwares in place for this stuff that literally charge them online on the 6th day of the month for that late fee every time to get that late fee up. In our management company, we make like $7-8 grand a month on late fees. We have a lot of properties, but at the same time, that's a big chunk of money. And if you're being efficient at this and running this to the letter as best you can, you want to make sure that collection procedures, your delinquency procedures, your repairs and maintenance procedures, all of these things are lined up like really, really well so that you understand them and you know what proper property management is. So the reason I know what proper property management is because I lost a lot of money from property managers in the past. And I'm like, they're either really bad at maintenance or accounting or communication or they're really good at some things and bad at others. You got leasing, you got a ton of management, and that's really what this is. Multifamily is strategically going through and looking at every expense to see how can you go through and make this more efficient, from proper operational efficiencies on the management side and from expense reduction and finding new ways of reducing this. Now, another way for utilities, this case is just cheaper to do a utility bill back, okay? On some of these some of them are not separately metered, especially for water. So now they have water meter things that you can put on the piping to actually go through and monitor how much water is going into each individual unit, so then you can do a bill back and that outside company will bill them back. Don't ask me how much that costs. I have no idea. I haven't done it yet. But I know about these things that exist if you're buying a new building to actually do this with, okay? Interest reserves. I was even saying how much money are they just holding there in their accounts. Management payroll. So on a lot of this, I'm going through and saying, okay, the manager for this unit, some of that is my uncle's money that he's getting for helping management. Some of it is a property manager that he gets paid to live in the units and do this, and he gets a discount on rent, he gets a free cell phone, he gets a free home phone. And I'm like, get voice over IP now. Well, you don't need a cell phone or a line at work for this. It's pretty interesting, We'll get them on the same plan or something. What's going on here? Why are you providing that? And so all I said here is they love the manager. He does a great job. I'm like, well, then don't replace him. Go through and find out actually how much he's really making. Because if you're getting a discount on rents and you're under rented, he's making a lot more than what you really think he's making. So all it is a matter of saying, okay, if I was to go to an outside manager and have this done, what are they going to charge me on a monthly basis as far as management fees, and how much am I really paying in management fees to manage this building? I think this one ended up being around 7%, total for all of it, so I just kind of left it alone. I didn't do a whole lot with these utilities here because the biggest gain is all on the income side. But going through this in every detail, so we have interior and exterior maintenance. Now you can see the pro forma, or what they actually had for the year was like $80,000, and that's because they just did a giant construction job on the outside of the building where they spent, around 80 grand to actually do the whole outside. And so when you're going through and showing the brokers pro forma, you've got to take out those giant capital expenditures where you just did that, because that's not representative of what it actually cash flows. Okay? Electric, always putting low flow or low electric usage, everything in your properties, low flow water and water usage and things like that. Real estate taxes. You should be disputing these every single year. Every year. This is the biggest expense, and in downtown Seattle where things are raising like crazy, they're going up every year. So you have to dispute constantly for those taxes. Elevator maintenance, they have a contract for this, so it's a matter of reviewing the contract. They pay like $104 a month for the phone inside the elevator. And, I don't know if that's right or not, but I'm going to go find out for them and actually analyze it and say, can we get like 5, quotes from elevator maintenance companies and see what kind of new tech they have that's out there. You got to be careful. It's not like you can use in an elevator. You probably need like a landline or something like that, just because can't just rely on the internet and someone's stuck in the elevator, you know? So, insurance, having the right insurance is key. So you want to have something that gives you full replacement cost coverage. You do not want depreciated value coverage. Because what they say is, hey, you just bought this property, did a full renovation, it's brand new right now. 10 years later, they say, oh, everything's 10 years older. You get this amount down here now because it's worth less, because the building is depreciated. Full replacement cost, they'll take care of everything to completely replace the damage. In addition to that, you want to get loss of rents coverage on your units. We usually get 12 months at a minimum on those. You want to basically go and make sure you have the construction cost coverage as well. And on a lot of these buildings, you want to talk to a really good insurance agent because they see what people get sued on. The 30 unit that I did, I partnered with my insurance agent on it, okay? And he made me get crazy policies, and I was like, whoa, dude, that's kind of a lot of money. Like, why are we spending that? He's like, trust me, I'm getting domestic violence coverage, I'm getting dog bite coverage, I'm getting like 5 other coverages that are all exclusions in the policy. And the reason they're excluded is because they had to pay a bunch of claims. So they're like, yeah, we're just going to exclude that now. And now you're screwed. You know, so these are the types of things you want to look at all the exclusions in these policies and say, what am I afraid of? Let me go talk to a really experienced agent that sees all these problems, you know, and can give you the right advice on what exclusions you should be looking out for and paying attention to, you know, so. Manager, rent credit, you know, that type of thing. So here's what I did. Is I said, look, at a 4 cap, this thing, you know, is worth about $9 million on current and could be worth $14 million, but you're going to get paid from some of the upside potential as well. So you could get close. I felt like they were going to get closer to $11 million on this, and that's what a lot of the brokers were saying too after I gave them my analysis on this. And so I went through and said, hey, they're planning on going through and trying to buy something new through a 1031 exchange in order to increase cash flow, right? And so based on that cash flow increase, I'm saying, well, what are they going to find in this market? Are they going to counterbalance this amazing location for a little bit of extra cash flow, and is that worth it? For an area that may have a harder downturn in the market where there's major demand in this whole area, they're going crazy development with all the new railways and things like that in this area. It's like they're trying to make it like downtown San Francisco basically in this whole area. And so it's a matter of counterbalancing. Should we go do this whole, you know, flip into these other areas and buy in these other areas and do a 1031 exchange, which is hugely risky because they're going, well, we got to wait to even market the property for sale until we find a replacement property, and then you're a distressed buyer on this side trying to find that. And if you sold this first, you got 45 days to find a property. I am not trying to find an $11 million property in 45 days. And if you find it, then you're like, great, now I got to go do due diligence. So really, you have to basically make your purchase contingent on your sale over here, and you can't sell this building until all contingencies are gone on this side. You know what I mean? So that's a big challenge. So there's a way to do like a reverse exchange where you actually go find the property first, go buy it, then go sell your building within a certain time frame as well, which makes it a lot less risk. But the problem with that is that where's the cash come from? Right? And so they have this free and clear, they have a couple other free and clear properties, and so looking at it from that scale, if they could go leverage the other buildings to go buy that other building, you know, and do the whole thing to take it down, you know? So I'll put a big enough deposit down and whether wait. And in this kind of a market, you don't want them to have to wait until you sell another building to actually do that. You are definitely not getting your price over here if you have to do that, you know? So I was showing them here, like, look, if you were to do the 1031 exchange, if you were not going to do the 1031 exchange, and what that's going to look like with an increase and decrease in cash flow here. Okay? So the last one that I want to go over on the examples of the syndication piece is a syndicated investment, because this is totally different than you doing a deal yourself. Okay? The syndicated investment gets to, this is something that I invested in previously. You know, it was a $3.154 million investment, 267 units in Mesquite, Texas. Okay? And so this building has, normally when you are investing in a syndication deal, I'm just trying to show you guys, this is all the, look at this, 45 pages of this junk right here. You just got to read through every single thing. And if you don't read this, then you've got major problems, right? Because you don't know what you're investing in. And so whenever you invest in a syndication, you better know what you're doing. You better know how these things work and what every stipulation in the operating agreement says before you invest in it, because there's a lot of bad ones out there, okay? A ton of them. And so the structure for these things is you always want to have a preferred return involved on these, so you can see how they line this out. Where basically, so let me find that. So here's the cap rate, 8.84%, cash on cash, 10.39%. So here's the preferred equity hurdle rate. So what's happening here with this split? So normally what happens is you want to find these deals that are run by professional operators, where you do background checks and criminal checks on the project. Okay? Oh wow, it's not 10. Okay, so you do background criminal checks on the project specifically, and you always want a preferred return involved. Okay? If you're partnering on these things, what a preferred return is, it says that if you're relying on the operator to do all the work and their experience here, you're just a passive investor in these where you're buying shares in an LLC. The preferred return says you get 9% on your money or 8% on your money. I see 7s through 10s depending on the deal. You get that first before the operator gets paid anything. Okay? Then after that, then there's a 60-40 split in the investor's favor until they hit some other hurdle rate, and then it's more in favor of the operator. So they get the back end big chunk on that back end, so it's structured for performance here, you know? So these are the types of things you want to really look at, and you want to look at how much fees are they getting up front on this too. Do they build in a bunch of acquisition fees up front, which kills your return, and also takes a lot more risk for you now because they just got paid a bunch of money. But at the same time, they should be getting paid something, right? Because you got to make sure that they're fully focused on this, right? The whole time. You don't want them just being like broke until the very end. You know, you got to make sure there's enough to keep them going and focused on that project. And then in addition to that, what's the buyout procedures involved? How do you get out? And normally you have to be, on a lot of these, you have to be an accredited investor, which means you have to make over $200,000 a year for the last 2 years, or have $1 million in net worth excluding your primary residence. You also have to be a sophisticated investor, meaning you have invested in opportunities in the past and understand your risks. The reason why they do that is because they think now, the SEC says, hey, if you lose your money, you're a big boy now, you're a big girl now, sorry, you lost your money, you know what you were doing when you invested in this. That's why they make you an accredited investor. There's other regulation filings that allow you to invest when you're not an accredited investor. At the same time, they're limited typically to like 35 non-accredited investors. It's called a Reg A 506 filing. Okay, so just to kind of give you an idea of this, you know, these types of structures here, it's really important to understand what you're investing in, and there's a sophisticated investor questionnaire. There's an operating agreement, just like a normal LLC, right, which tells you what the operator is allowed to and not to do as the manager of that LLC. Okay. There's also a private placement memorandum typically with these that is basically like a giant legal business plan, I'd say, you know, for this. It goes over 5 pages of risks, including they can take your money and go to Vegas and lose it, and you'll lose all your money. That's a risk. So the attorneys are like, let me set every risk I could possibly think of. Okay?
$10,000 to get that paper done.
Say it again?
It's costing like $10,000 to get that paper done.
Oh, more than that sometimes. So, and then this is the last thing I want to show you guys is how do you analyze these and how do you find them? Okay? So CoStar is a great place to go to find properties. All your local agents are a great place to find properties. However, usually when the agent gets it, that means it's not good anymore. That means I've had agents throw tenants in properties because they're like, I don't care if they're qualified, just get them in there because they're going to be occupied and it'll be good for financing. You know, so looking at some of these things, it's really important to understand how do you know when you have a good deal or not, right? And so from this perspective, this unit right now, and I know that's not tagged correctly, but you want to compile all your information as much as you can. Yes, question?
You said CoStar? Where do you go?
CoStar typically can have a ton of multifamilies available, but a lot of times they charge you like for an annual subscription. It's like $1,400 for nationwide per month. and then they make you pay for a year, because otherwise you're just going to get all the data, and you're like, I'm good after the month, thanks. But they're basically like an MLS for this, and a lot of the big commercial agents, they all have this now as well. Now, a great way to go to find these things is to go to a target market, find every single multifamily you can find from title, okay? Hone that down to exactly where you want to be, and start targeting them and mailing to them, and doing, a lot of times you can do skip traces on them and background checks to find out who the owners are. You're looking at all these things, and it's very, very manual if you're going to go through this route, but you're finding who the owners are. You got to get through management companies, you got to get through LLCs, but you see signature lines on paperwork. You can do background checks on people to find out all their phone numbers and things like that, and start calling them. It's amazing what you can do nowadays, and there's a lot of different strategic ways now. You can specifically like geo-target on Facebook and Google and that kind of thing. There's so much tech out there now. You can get data all over the place. You just have to find the right data sources, okay? List source is a great source, but your title companies have all that data as well, depending on if they provide that to the public and things like that for you. So this unit right here, I just said, okay, if this is 200 units and it's currently running for $11.25 a month, and this is quick and dirty approach, okay? And there's 200 of them, that's $225,000 of cash flow, 200 times 11.25 per month. Annually, 270, that's 2.7 million, and then 90% of that with a 10% vacancy, 45% expense allowance, okay, comes to $3 million in cash flow, okay? And an 8 cap to me, that's worth $17 million. If I was to go through and increase rents to $1,800 a unit on this, my 8 cap now is $28.26 million. Now that's because I have a giant increase in rent there, of course.
Yeah.
So now it's like, if you know these numbers, okay, here's quick and dirty, 45% expense ratio, the lower your rent amount, if this was a $500 or $600 a month rent, your expense ratio is going to go up substantially. It could be as high as 60% in some cases, because the expenses a lot of times can be standard. You still have repairs, you still have taxes and insurance and management, and all those types of things. So in this case, I use a 45% expense ratio here when I'm just doing my quick and dirty. Then I'm saying, okay, 17 to 28 million, I got about 11 million bucks in here. Then how much is it going to cost for the rehab? Okay, so if I'm looking at here, 200 units. At a major gut rehab, this is Tennessee pricing, okay, at $25,000, not a rehab but not gutting, and then like a cleanup. This is like Tennessee prices. Then, it depends on what the unit is. Then if that's $5 million or $3 million or 1.2 plus, the outside of the building, which was it's a total estimate based on what you're seeing on the building, right? You're like, if it's a 20-unit building, and you're going, okay, how much does it cost to paint this outside? You need to start to get quotes and get understandings of how much these materials and costs are in order to be really proficient at this, okay? So like on this building, I'm just totally making it up out of thin air, saying it's $1 million on the outside, because I'm looking at a 200-unit building and saying, yeah, sounds reasonable, right? But really, you don't know. If it needs a roof on a 200-unit building, you have multiple buildings, tons of buildings. And so you have to go and multiply that with a number of buildings and really extrapolate the data. But I'm just doing a really quick and dirty approach here. And I'm saying, great, my rehab cost to rehab all these units is like $6 million, right? And so if I'm at $28 million, and I'm saying, hey, I'm at $21 million with my purchase price and all my costs, then I'm looking at an overhead of another 20%. Here's my total cost, $25 million. It's worth $28 million on this deal. So this one, obviously this is just numbers to check out the numbers. But you can quick and dirty this and say, if I had to rehab these things and I knew I could increase rents to this because you just pulled rent comps, then where am I going to be out of cash flow? And the reason why I look at an 8 cap on these things is because if you're analyzing this from a cash flow perspective, most banks are going to require you to put 35% down, 30% down. The bigger the loans you get, the lower the down payment you can usually get as well. You can get like 20% in some cases. You can get 30-year loans in some cases. They're much rarer now because of the interest rate risk. They don't want to take it. But there's some great financing out there available to you depending on the size of that property, you know. And so if you're putting 35% down or 30% down, they usually underwrite at a 30% down payment at a 5.5% interest rate. Usually you're doing a 20 or 25-year AM versus 30-year AM on commercial. That number, that 8%, when I'm leveraging at that ratio, typically gets me to about a 10% cash-on-cash return on my money. And so I'm looking at that metric and how do I get to my 10% metric. So my investors typically, if I'm syndicating on a giant deal like this, I typically need to hit an 8 to 10% cash flow return and a 15% plus overall return if you're counting over a 10-year period. Okay, so when you're doing that aspect, you're looking at that and saying, how am I going to cash flow? And so looking at I have all these valuation assumptions where I'm coming up with 30%, 30% down at a 5.5% rate, and you also have these prepayment reserves. Remember that 80,000 or that 100 and something thousand that I came up with up front on the other one? I put 249,000 on this one just to, come up with it. But you have, your unit mix comps and things like that you put in here. You have your actual cash flows. So this is like you have your pro forma that comes in here that flows from this other 12-month trailing tab. And then you have, this is what I think it's going to be next year, this year, next year, the next year after that. And you do a full 10-year pro forma here to come up with what you think your real numbers are. And then you're coming down here and you're putting in assumptions of vacancies and bad debts and things like that. And then you're coming in and saying, okay, depending on the size of the building, you have a lot more admin, legal, marketing, payroll costs, all these costs on a big, big building that you need to be estimating each time. So all this really is coming up with what you think your costs are, what you think your revenue is after it's finished, and what your total cost is, and then saying what is it cash flowing, and what is the normal cap rate in the area based on that cash flow. And if I was to hold it, how much money am I making every single month after the financing? And so you're trying to make sure you do all this homework and all these guesses, right, in order to make sure you've got a good deal. And it becomes less and less guesswork as you go through this process, okay? So I just wanted to show you guys that because I think, it's a matter of knowing your numbers. All this is numbers. This is why being a CPA helps a ton with this stuff. And I still make a ton of mistakes because I'm too damn busy and and make mistakes just like anybody else. But at the same time, over time you start developing this to where you know your numbers so well that your risk becomes less and less and less. Okay? So I hope you guys got enough out of this or something out of this. If you guys have any questions for me, you guys can email me at mpo@ocgproperties.com, and I won't answer my phone. So you guys can email me and we can kind of go from there. Okay? mpo@ocgproperties.com as in Matthew Patrick Owens. So. Yeah, cards are in the back. So thank you guys very much. Feel free to join us next month.